Hello, welcome listeners to another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love hosted by Richard Osler. We have another brave gay Latter-day Saint willing to step forward and share his story. Welcome to the podcast, Lucas Batista.
Thank you, Richard.
Lucas is joining me via Zoom in Utah County, where he's a BYU student, and I'll give you a little background. Lucas is from Brazil. He may tell us more about where he lived, but a little town called Palmas, if any of you know that. I've never been to Brazil. I'd love to go there. And he spent a couple years in Spain, in southern Spain, in his teenage years, and then later after his mission. Then he went to a completely different country for his mission. He's kind of doing every country on the planet, to Chile in the Santiago East mission. And he's been home about 6 years. He did some work online at BYU, Idaho. He's been at BYU in Provo for about 3 months. He's a pre-business major. We're looking to get into the finance program. He's a business owner in the past. He's owned a bakery that he started in Brazil. And I think that's part of his desire to be in the finance world. He has a gay Latter-day Saint, as I mentioned. This is kind of the most public thing Lucas has ever done. He's out to family and close friends, but this is really brave of him. He's been listening to the podcast for a couple of years, and every time I meet someone like Lucas, I'm just kind of overcome with the courage of a queer Latter-day Saint to step forward and be willing to share their story. And this is often done out of love for others that need the hope and perspective and tools that are part of Lucas's story. And also, hopefully we can better support good men like Lucas that are obviously committed to the church and aware of their sexual orientation and trying to fit all those pieces together and find a place in the kingdom. So is that okay for an introduction, Lucas?
That was perfect. Thank you so much.
And I want to go to some of these countries. I've been to southern Spain a little bit. I've never been to Chile or Brazil. They're on my bucket list. But we'll turn it over to you, Lucas.
Yeah. So, one of my friends, I was talking to him like a few days ago, and he said, I don't like when people say that they're coming out. I was like, why? He said, well, it's because it should be letting people in. And I love that because I'm not really getting out of anywhere. I'm just opening the door so that more people get into my life. And that's what I want with this. And to help others, feel like they're not alone and that there's hope out there. I guess that I should start with my childhood because, well, my family and my story is kind of interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my mom. I got permission from her to talk about this. So my parents, they split it when I was around 3 because of some things that happened that broke my mom's heart. They weren't members at the time. And they got divorced. I stayed with my dad, and that changed my life forever, both for good and for, not so many positive reasons. So I grew up knowing that my mom is also gay. At the time, she loved my dad with her whole heart. That's what she told me. But after these things that happened, she kind of said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to live the life that I want to live. And that's what she did. I stayed with my dad, and then he met my stepmom, who was a member of the church. Well, who is a member. So that's how we got introduced to the church, me and my older brother. We started coming to church with her. My dad got engaged, and then they got married. And, we started like growing up in the church. I was 6 when they got married. And it was great. I'm so grateful for the things that my stepmom has taught me over my life. It was hard though for me because I grew up hearing really bad things about people like my mom. And at the same time, I was like, wait a minute. I am like my mom. Like, would you tell that to me in my face from people from my family? I mean, we're over that. We talk about it, but the things that a kid hears when he's young kind of stay with me. So I was kind of the perfect kid and teenager. I was really good at school. I had a lot of friends. I was so in Brazil we have class presidents, but it's for each class, so it's not for the whole class. Like in a you know, so like for the 3 years that I was in high school, I was the class president. I was involved with the students. I loved how the teachers they loved me. I enjoyed my teenage years. That was after I went to Spain. Before when I moved to Spain when I was 12, that's when I started to really struggle with these feelings. Well, I know that I'm gay. I know that my mom is gay too, but we never ever talked about it ever. And that caused a lot of confusion in my mind because I was not with my dad anymore. I still kept going to church. I was just 12, but I promised him that even though I was not going to live with him anymore, I would still keep going to church. And I honored that promise. But I was really struggling. At that time, I was praying really, really bad for God to change this in me because all the comments that I would hear at church and from my family and from people I never met before was that like being gay is bad and that you are going to a bad place if you are gay. And I was terrified. I was scared, really scared. But that was also the time when I really started like engaging in the gospel and really like trying to figure things out, if this was true or not. So when I was 12, I read the Book of Mormon from cover to cover for the first time, and I got my answer, and I could not deny it. And even though I did not know what was going to happen to me in the future, I knew that this was true. And as I look back, I can see God in my life during those years. I spent 2 years in Spain from 12 to 14. And I got involved in some things that I shouldn't. I was still trying to make things right, but I felt like I was failing. So there was this day when I prayed really hard and I said, God, I don't know what you want me to do with my life. I'm just 13. That was right before I turned 14. But I feel like if I stay in Spain, I am not gonna go down a good path. Should I move back to Brazil? And the answer was yes. And I felt it. And I said, well, I got to call my dad and I had to come back to Brazil. So that's what I did. I was struggling. The relationship with my mom and I wasn't very good at that time. I was having this conflict with the church and my mom and me. She was okay with me going to church. She never like said no, but like the things that I saw her, like her lifestyle, and then what the church preached, and then my life, I was like in the middle of this battle, and I said, "Well, I gotta go back to live with my dad," and that was a great thing. Uh, that's when I started to be more, I would say, social. I was still struggling with these feelings because I felt inadequate. I felt like my family would never accept me. Uh, that was a very well hidden part of my life. I was a typical boy, so everybody thought that I was straight, but I wasn't, and I was ashamed of that part of me. Sadly, I would hear comments from my dad about people like me that would break my heart all the time because I would say, well, if my dad is saying that about other people, then what is he gonna say when he finds out that I am like them? So I was always anxious inside. I was always wearing a mask. Um, it wasn't easy because I tried to date, but it didn't work. So people kind of start asking me questions And I was embarrassed, and all the time I was like, "Say no, I'm not gay. I just, I just haven't found the girl yet." So, um, it was hard for me because the social pressure from like my friends, from the church, from the youth group, because they were all dating, they were going out on dates, and I went on dates, but for me it was like friendship dates. I had no other intention, unless doing what teenagers do when they're dating, the silly and funny things. So I felt out of place, but as I grew spiritually, as I kept reading the scriptures, as I kept praying, going to the temple, I felt that I wasn't broken. And those feelings of shame and of fear were because of what people were saying, not because of what God was saying to me, because I never, ever felt rejected by God, like ever. I, I could always talk to him like openly about this in my prayers, and I never felt ashamed of myself because of him or the scriptures, but it was always because of other people, like always. So time passed. I've always wanted to serve a mission, always. That was something that I always wanted since I started going to church with my dad and my stepmom. I saw the missionaries and I was like, whoa, I want to be like one of them when I grow up. So I always had this desire to serve, and I started to prepare like really early. I would go out with the missionaries in my word. I would study, preach my gospel, the scriptures. I would share the gospel with my classmates. So I really loved the gospel, and I really do still. But right before my mission, I started to get a little bit anxious and depressed because I thought, well, I'm going to go on a mission and I'm going to be surrounded by men 24/7. Am I going to be able to do that? And I kind of I had like these thoughts in my mind. Well, I know I have to do this, but will I be able to make it? So I kept praying about it. I kept serving. I kept loving people because I love people. So I thought, well, there's only one way to figure this, to know this, which is going on a mission. So I went. I submitted my papers. Wait, sorry. Actually, before that, my mom came to visit me in Brazil. I was 18 at the time, and we still hadn't had talk about this in my life. And I was really, I don't know why I was scared because she was like me, but because we never talked about it, I thought that this was kind of a taboo thing to discuss. So, yeah, she spent 3 months with me in Brazil, and I did not talk to her about this. I was too scared. But when she left, the first week after she left, I called her and said, "Hey, mom, there's something I got to tell you." And I was shaking, Richard. I was so scared. And I said, "Well, mom, I'm like you. And I like men." And she paused for a while and just said, "Well, I know." And I was like, "What? Why did you never talk about this with me?" And she was like, "Yeah, it was kind of awkward. I didn't know how to bring it up. But I was like, well, you should, because I've been like dealing with this my whole life." And she said, "Yes, I know." And because she's not a member, even though she's Christian, she's not a member. Well, at the time, she said, because, okay, when my mom divorced my dad, she had to hear all of this stuff from my dad's family because she came out to everyone and she, well, I'm lesbian and that's it. So she was very open about it. And she had heard like a lot of bad and negative stuff about it from my dad's family and from other people in general. My town is very conservative, so you can imagine how it goes. So she said to me, "Well, son, I'm sorry that you're going through this." And the words that she said was that this was a curse. And I wasn't expecting to hear that from my mom. I understand her point of view. She was struggling with it still, all of the prejudice and the internal shame that she had, even though she was open about it. So I said, well, I'm going to start a mission, right? And she said, yeah, I know. So we talked a little bit more, and then that was it. We never talked about it after that until I came back to Spain 3 years ago. So like 5 years, no, yeah, almost 5 years after that. That was when we started talking about it again. At that point, I still hadn't talked about this with my dad and my brother, older brother, and I was not planning on doing it because my dad is like, a very strict, conservative. He's a good guy, but sometimes, I was like, whoa, okay, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't do this. But I never told him anything. So I went on my mission and I absolutely loved it. My mission so far has been the highlight of my life. My mission president, I'm pretty sure that I was supposed to be there. I planned to be very open about this with my mission president. I had to. The first thing, my first interview was like, hey, okay, so here's the game. I'm gay. I am fully committed to the gospel. I just need your help because this might be a little hard for me. And he was extremely supportive. Every time we would have like interviews, we would talk about this. So I felt a lot of love from him. He was great. Um, so that was my first interview, and I went to the mission field, the MTC. My experience in the MTC was also good. And these feelings, they were still there. I was not expecting them to go away. I knew that I couldn't just turn off, push a button and say, okay, this is going to disappear. I knew that was not going to happen. So the feelings were still there. I still struggle a little bit, but it wasn't something that I actually worried about. I had wonderful companions. My mission president was very involved in my life. So he made sure that everything was in order so things wouldn't be, hard for me in that sense. The mission was hard, not going to lie. But in that way, it wasn't. I did want to come out to some of my comps, but one of my mission presidents, he said that that wasn't a good idea. So of course, I followed his advice. But I still think that it would have been better for me to be open with them, just to avoid some, uncomfortable conversations about girls. Because missionaries, a bunch of men together, they're going to talk about girls and all of those stuff. And even though I engaged in those conversations, I never felt that I was being honest because I was lying to them about girls and dating and all that. I was just trying to fit in. So when it comes to my sexual attractions in a mission, overall, it wasn't a problem. I loved it. I served a full-time mission. The 2 years, I never thought about coming back home because of this. I know that some people struggle with it and they do come back home, and that's totally valid and okay. But towards the end of my mission, I think about 3 months before going home, I became really depressed because the thought of coming back home and having to deal with this again started to weigh in my mind. I became really depressed. I was also, I had a bad knee at that time. So I remember that we stayed at home with my last or second to last companion for like 2 weeks straight in the house because I couldn't walk. That increased my feelings of inadequacy. How was my life going to be after my mission? That gave me too much time to think about life, and I did not want that. So I eventually got better from my knee. We started working again. I was going to therapy. I had like this phone therapy with one of the mission therapists or the area. I don't remember, which kind of helped, but not much because I still had to deal with the reality that I was gay. I was going to go back home. People were going to start asking about when are you going to get married? Who are you dating? What are you going to do with your life? And I did not want to answer those questions. I wanted to be open with them, but I couldn't because of my family. My dad, he didn't know, kind of, because later on, as I keep telling my story, you're gonna know that he did know that. He did know that, but he just decided to stay silent about it. So I started a mission. I came back home. Awesome, great. I had two excellent mission presidents. My comms were amazing. Came back home, and my plan was to come to BYU. And I tried. I worked like a whole year to come to BYU. I was accepted. But some things started to happen in my life. Again, I started to get depressed, very anxious. I fell back into some old patterns that I struggled with before my mission. And that increased my feelings of that my life was not going to work out. For a while, I thought that I could marry a woman. There was even one of the missionaries who served with me. I was her district leader. We're still good friends, but in my mind, I thought, well, I think I could make this work with her. But after I got home, and after she got home, she got married. So I thought, well, there goes my opportunity to make this work. But honestly, Richard, I was just in love. I think with the idea of falling in love, I was not, I was not really attracted to her, nor to the thought of maybe getting married to a girl. For a while, I thought that that was going to work in my life, but now I know that no, that's not going to work. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But right now, I think that's not a path for me. So in Brazil, I was hiding these feelings, these emotions. And because of that, I got into this depression cycle and anxiety and old patterns that I was trying to overcome, but they kept coming back. And 2 weeks before the deadline to submit some of the papers for BYU, the person who was going to help me with all the documentations, he said that he was not going to help me anymore, and I was broken. I felt so sad when he said that because I had this confirmation that I should go, that it was good. So I started to like think, well, I felt an impression to do this. I felt the thing were going to work out. Why didn't it work out? So I started to question God a little bit. I wouldn't say that I was starting to lose faith. That wasn't it. I was just a little bit confused with my life. And then that was right before the pandemic too. So I couldn't do anything with my life. I couldn't go to college. I didn't have a job at the time because I had quit it because I was going to BYU. So I was like, what do you want to do with my life? I mean, tell me. I've started a mission. I've been faithful all my life. I read the scriptures every day. I go to the temple. I serve. I do everything that you ask of me. Why is my life not working? And I didn't get any answer. And I just went into this depression season in my life. And that was actually when I started the business that I had, the bakery, which gave me a little bit of hope for my future. I don't know why, but like doing that changed something within me. And that was during the pandemic, which is kind of like interesting. You know, you could open in a business during the pandemic. What? A bakery? But I did. And it worked out. And it was great. But like 2 years into the business, I felt that that was not my place, that I should come back to Spain. That was like a recurrent thought that I had. You got to come back to Spain. You got to come back to Spain. But the thing is, when I was 14, I promised myself that I would never, ever come back to Spain because that was not a place for me. Because I thought that if I went back there, I would like, you know, leave the church because of all the influences and all that. So I sold everything in the bakery and I said, okay, well, if you want me to go back to Spain, I will. So I went. And coming back to Spain at that time was the best decision that I could ever made. It was really, really hard too. I had no friends. I had my mom. I had my word, word. But I was not open about being gay. I had no friends at the time as I said. So I started asking God, what was it that He wanted me to do in Spain? At the same time, I was taking online classes from BYU, which was good. I didn't work for a while though. So I didn't have a job. I was living with my mom. I was helping in the house and she had a business. So I was working with her like from time to time, but I was mainly focused in my studies. And so I started to open up with my mom about this. I told her that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was scared because, I did not want to leave the church. I did not want to stop doing the things that I was doing. But the pain was becoming overwhelming. And I started having some suicidal thoughts. Of course, I never told this because she would go crazy if I tell her this. Um, and there was this time that before going to bed at night, I prayed really hard and I said, God, please help me to know what I should do with my life or send someone help me because I don't know what to do. I was really distressed. I was very hopeless that night. And I went to bed and I had this beautiful dream. I was standing at this very white, clear, bright place, and a guy came over and he gave me a hug. And I felt the most peace I've ever felt before. And I woke up and I was feeling better. I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. Let's keep walking. Um, and then I started making friends. Um, the missionaries were always over at my house because I was the ward secretary, and there weren't many members at the time in that ward. So I was the only one. I think there was like one or two more YSA in the ward. So the gather point was my house. So the missionaries they were always there with me. I would invite them for lunch to hang out. So the missionaries actually helped me a whole lot with my feelings of loneliness. I came out to a few of them, which was great. They helped me. Um, but still, I was feeling like something was missing in my life. I knew that God wanted me there, but I was like, okay, but what do you want? What do you want me to do here? And I started to meet these people, these heavenly friends, as I like to call them, that got me through very difficult parts of my life in Spain. But there was this time when after church activity that again I was really depressed and I was having some suicidal ideation at the time. And I left the church feeling like I did not belong there. So as I start to walk back home, I'm crossing the streets and I'm not looking like anywhere. I just wanted to end my life. I felt embarrassed at the time, but I couldn't see any like escape to the sufferance and to the grief that I was feeling. So I went to the bus station. I get into the bus and I am crying. And I look, and like right in front of me, there was a guy. He was typing on his phone. God has not left you. He is with you. You're not alone. So when I saw that text, I was like, I know you're reaching out. Even though I'm mad at you, I know you're reaching out. I felt a little bit better, but I was still feeling awful. So I get to my hometown, start walking back home. It was a 5 minute walk from the bus stop to my house. And I was crying still. I was ready to give up. I was ready to give up on not only my faith, but on God and everything in my life. I had no hopes because of some things that were happening in my life with my family and with one of these friends that I had. And as I walked down the street, it was empty. It was like late at night. It was empty. And I see this woman. She's walking towards me. And I was crying. And she stops, looks at me with the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen in my life. And as she looks at me, I'm filled with like this overwhelming sense of joy and peace and love. And she says, me and my child, we are very, very hungry. Can you get us some food? And at that time, I was struggling financially. So I had like 35 euros in my bank account, which is like $37, I think. And I was like, oh yes, I would do this gladly. So I went to the grocery store. In all of that, those thoughts, all of that feeling of that I didn't belong, all of those feelings that I wasn't enough, that I was broken, that nobody loved me, that I was destined to be alone forever, they vanished. And as I was walking down the aisles, getting the stuff that she needed for her and for her son, I felt that the very same angels of heaven, they were there with me. And I like to think that this woman, I mean, maybe she's just like a normal human, but in my mind, she was Jesus in disguise who came down right when I needed the most. And after I got home, I prayed and I gave thanks. I said, thank you. Thank you for reaching out to me, which is kind of funny because I was the one needing help, but he put someone in my path for me to help her. And that healed what I was feeling at the time. So after that, I was still feeling lost. I kept praying and I kept asking God for a friend because I didn't really have friends in Spain. And God sent this wonderful, beautiful soul. Uh, she's actually one of my best friends now. She was a referral to the missionaries. And we were at this activity someday and I was feeling bad. So I was not very talkative. And she reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to hang out with me? I was like, I don't even know you, but okay, let's go. So that was the beginning of one of the best friendships ever. She became a lighthouse to me when I was lost. She wasn't a member. She got baptized. I had the opportunity to baptize her. And we would talk about everything in life. I came out to her. I said, well, I'm gay. So, well, hey, surprise. And of course, she didn't care. She was like, it doesn't matter. You're my friend, and I'm going to be in this with you until the end. And that was something that I quite never had before. Like, I had friends and people, but people who said that I'm going to be with you in this, no, that was something new to me. Um, so we started like hanging out more. She was baptized. We went to church together when she was not working, and some more people started to join in my story too. some missionaries actually that I became really good friends with that are still my friends here at BYU. They're here. So these people, I love them. But again, I was always asking God, what do you want me to do here? What do you want me to do here? And I felt impressed to apply to BYU. And I was like, I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. Why do you want me to go back? Sorry, to start applying to BYU again? And I just followed the prompting. And as I was doing all of this, the process to come to BYU, because international students have a little bit more of a trouble with all the documentation and all of that. I also met one of these missionaries who was actually one of my good friends too. It's because of him that I'm here. Actually, his parents, they helped me a lot. And I came out to him. I was really, really, really scared to come out to him because I thought, well, you're one of these people that I love so much. And what if you abandon me? What if you betray me? But I felt like I should. And because of that, we are better friends now. So again, it's always like this in my life. Every time something good is about to happen, I crash down emotionally. And it was the same. I applied to BYU. I got in. I started the process, for the money and all the stuff. And I started feeling depressed again. And I was about to give up again. The suicidal thoughts came back. I did not want to live anymore. The same old thoughts came back. And I remember praying to God this night. And I said, well, this is my last day. I don't want to do anything more. And if you don't not help me, I'm going to give up. And I went to bed. And I woke up the next day to an email from myself from 4 years ago that I had sent into the future. And I'm going to read it to you. So I woke up feeling bad still. But as I opened my email and I read it, I was like, whoa, okay. And this is what I said. Dear future me, I think that by the time you will be reading this, many things will be different. The world's not the same anymore, and you may feel weird about it because not even your life is the same anymore. I know you so well, and my question for you today is, have you come this far only to come this far? Will you give up all you have built just because you can't see any hope? Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean hope is not there. God has never forsaken you, and neither should you. If everything has gone as planned, you are now a successful businessman. But if you haven't reached that goal yet, don't worry and keep fighting for your dreams. My last piece of advice for you is to seek out help. You can't do everything on your own. Even God, with his power, doesn't do everything on his own. He uses people just like you to accomplish his work. Trust in others and trust that God will send the right person in your life. So I had forgotten about this email that I had sent to the future 4 years ago. And it came right at the time when I needed it the most. So again, I said, well, God, you tried to reach out and you did it. So this is a sign for me to keep walking. So I did. And I kept walking. That was last October, actually. So it wasn't that long ago. And after this, the most random people that I've never met before started reaching out to me saying that they wanted to help me with school and that they were going to do whatever was necessary for me to come to BYU. And I felt so blessed, Richard. Even though all of these thoughts and the depression and the sadness I was dealing with, they were still there. But I felt that God was reaching out to me through the most unexpected ways and sorry, that's not the word. And yeah, through the most unexpected people too. So I know that he has never given up on me. I know that he has always been there. As I look back, I can see him in like every step of my life. But because of being gay and the feelings of hopelessness about my future, because, well, I do not fit in. I mean, it's not that I don't actually, but I mean, I can't get married. If I choose to get married to a man, which is not something that I'm planning to, but if I choose to do that, then that means that I can't attend a temple anymore, that I can't be part of the circle. Even though I can be in the circle, I'm not really part of it. So all of those thoughts were like piling up over my life, since I was a little kid. The comments from past church leaders, which, okay, I mean, I know that they are imperfect, so I give them grace. I'm imperfect too. But all of those things that I heard while growing up, they were starting to like accumulate to this point in my life when I'm like, I'm gonna blow up. But every time I decided that I didn't want to keep walking anymore, he always reached out to me. Just as Ella Kieran said, like that God is in relentless pursuit of you. I can see that in my life. Right now, I'm here at BYU. It's not easy because of the culture, the dating culture, the marriage, and also the culture around gay people and the taboos and the prejudices and all of the misunderstandings that happen sometimes. To be honest with you, I don't feel like I fit in. And that's why I decided to gather the courage to come out to you and say, well, I think it's time to get rid of the shame that I've been feeling lately because I'm not broken. I know I am a child of God. I know that He loves me, and I know that I can receive personal revelation on how to guide and direct my life. And this is one of the things that I felt 3 weeks ago that I should do it. I felt that this is the point where I can be true to the covenants that I've made, but at the same time, to be honest with myself and with others. To be true to myself, I guess. That's a good word. Um, my story is way more detailed and way more complicated than what I've just shared, but this is like, we don't have enough time to talk about all the things I've gone through. But I do want to help people like me, especially here right now at BYU, to feel like they belong, to feel like they have a place, and to feel like they're not alone. Because I felt that for most of my life. And that is one of the greatest lies that Satan, I think, spreads out, right? That we are alone, that nobody loves us, that because we are different, then we don't fit in the church or we don't fit in the like around the people that we are surrounded by. But I know that Jesus is the one who gathers, and Satan is always trying to divide us. So one of the things that I want for my life is to be a gatherer, to gather people close to me, and to know that and so that they know that they're not alone and that God has not forsaken them. Whatever path they choose for their lives, God has not forsaken them, and that God loves them. His love is not conditional on what we do or what we choose. He loves us because that's his nature. He is love. He's law too, but he's also love. And some people think that because others have chosen a different path, then they're lost or forgotten or they don't deserve to be, taken care of. But that is not true. And that is a culture that I feel that sometimes in the church we still struggle with. Just because they make a different choice, then that means that, well, it's weird. It's awkward to reach out to them. Or, oh, you're going to confuse my child, or you're going to be a bad influence. And no, No. I mean, you can't be made into a gay person just because you were surrounded by someone who's gay. That's not how it works. So I really hope to be more inclusive with the people around me and to be a true disciple of Christ. Because as I said, Christ gathers and Satan divides. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Lucas, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll share some thoughts, listeners. I'm deeply moved by what Lucas said and wrote down a lot of things. It's interesting, after 800 episodes, there's still every episode wonderful, bright people like Lucas share unique thoughts. And you have done this. And I think my overall thought about you is just the incredible spiritual maturity and thoughtfulness of who you are and your willingness to share your story. I wrote down quite a few listeners. My style is to kind of go through these and then circle back with Lucas. But, you know, this feeling is I'm like my mom. I know I'm gay and I'm hearing all this content around gay people. And that's just honest reality of the road you've been walking a long time. And then you use the word shame very appropriately, this shame about this part of me. I feel like I'm always wearing a mask. I loved how the temple helped you not to feel shame. You never felt rejected by God. I loved your honesty about serving a mission and being around men 24/7. That is a consistent theme with, you know, lesbian and gay people that serve missions that I've heard. And most are kind of like you, that they are actually okay on their mission. Some stories are different, but that anxiety is sort of logical fear about the future. And that's a pretty logical fear, but I love just this pattern of I'll walk into that space. This pattern of I'll walk into spaces that I know are a little complicated, not quite know how they'll work out. I love you coming out to your mom, and your mom said I always knew. And that's a general parenting and friend thing I've learned, that if you think someone's gay, lesbian, trans, and you're in their circle of love, generally the best thing is to do is let them come out to you. And there's some exceptions to that, but I think it's better when people come out on their own terms. And sometimes we do say we knew, and that can be a little disarming to people, but I think that's a good coming out story. And then I recognize some things that were difficult in that conversation, like it's a curse and you're not cursed. And so you have this ability to sort of take content and say, is that really me? Or is that just assumptions or societal or conclusions of others? I love you opening up with your mission president, both of them. And this line you said, Lucas, I'm going to call the Elder Batista, because that's who you are at this point.
Yes.
I need your help. It might be difficult for me. Well, it's just an honest, faithful, courageous thing to say. Sometimes culturally we try to say we can do everything on our own, but you're just asking for your mission president. And I think people, when they know the kind of help we need, they often respond better. I think it's typical advice to say not to come out to your companions, but I probably think we could say, I trust you, Elder Batistas, to know the Spirit's going to work onto you and when and where it's going to be appropriate for you to come out, because I sense you did want to come out to your companions. I love you being honest about what you call open patterns of maybe not best behavior and how that was part of your life before your mission. And some of that came into your life after your mission. And my experience working with returned missionaries in church assignments is that's a consistent sort of theme. And this is talking to anybody that's sort of fallen into own patterns. I think Satan wants you to think you're back at square one and all the promises you made on your mission that you wouldn't fall into old patterns, and now you have. I think Satan wants to grab a hold of that and feel you're outside of God's love and kind of back to square one, and all the work you've done is for naught. And I think Christ wants you to look forward and say, no, you're one step further to ending old patterns. And I'm more interested in what you're learning from quote unquote old patterns and how you're making progress than if you're in old patterns or not. Then I wrote down you're very self-aware, when you said, I'm more in love with marriage than her. And this is one of your spiritual gifts, Lucas, is I think you're incredibly self-aware of who you are, and very mature spiritually and emotionally to do that. You're well beyond your years. And then I loved you going back to Spain. This is kind of your pattern of willing to step into spaces that might be uncomfortable for you. And indeed they are.
Yes.
And this Spain experience is sort of the dark night of your soul. And some of the most difficult experience, including seems like the most highest suicidality. I love you being honest about being suicide. To me, listeners, for those of you that are feeling suicidal, that is not a moral weakness. It's not a spiritual weakness. It's just the reality of life. And it doesn't mean you're a failure for feeling this way. And I love the way you normalize suicidality out in a very normal way, because our church, Sister Roberto, did that in General Conference. And then I loved how people came into your life, and this woman that you had 38 euros in the bank account and you called her Jesus in disguise. So these people that came along the way, and you probably helped her the same way. I love this friend who got baptized, that you baptized her, and then you said these words she said to you. And I hope it's the words all of us allies can say to queer people in our life. It's okay, as you came out to her, I will be with you till the end.
Yeah.
You remember those words are seared into you, Lucas, what she said to you and how much it meant to you. And we queer people need allies that will be with them to the end. And sort of, this doesn't change anything about my relationship with you, knowing you're queer. Or gay, whatever label someone feels, same-sex attraction that works best for them. I just thought that was a beautiful moment of ministering, and I think it to me, it's what our heavenly parents and our Savior do for us too. They will never leave us. I love that you never felt rejected from God. You've always felt God's love in your life, even when people made unkind comments. I just thought that was so powerful and such an invitation for all of us to be that friend. And we all can do that. We just need to be present in people's lives. I've never had anybody talk about an email to their future self. I think that's a thing where you can set up in Google and Gmail or whatever platform to send out emails delayed, but I've never heard of anybody that send one out to themselves delayed.
Yeah.
And then one of the invitations, an email to your future self, was to seek out help, knowing you well enough, Lucas, that you're still going to need help. And once again, seeking out help is not a moral weakness. It's a sign. It's a manly attribute. Real men seek help. Christ sought help.
Exactly.
His whole ministry was seeking help from his heavenly Father and being honest with the difficulty of his road, including, let this cup pass from me. And I think that role models real manhood and real womanhood to seek help. Sometimes culturally for men, we don't allow that. Then I love your story to get into BYU. And then I love why you want to do the podcast, is I still hear I don't really fit in. I'm maybe not from Utah, and I haven't grown up in this area. I'm gay. I'm international. I don't know if that is different, being an international student. But then you wanted to do this to get rid of the shame. Shame, listeners, to me is Satan's greatest tool to separate us in the love of God. And that can be sin related, but that can just be identity related too, which you're mostly talking about. This part of me that's not sin related, that I know God loves and accepts me, still creates shame. And this feeling that you don't have, that I'm not broken, that this is not, I'm not broken because I'm gay. And your desire to then come on the podcast to help give you hope. I think it's honest, but also to give others hope. And then I love what you said about Jesus gathers and Satan divides, and there's a lot of dividing going on. And I agree that's one of Satan's greatest tools. So that's my list, listeners. I think a lot of you, like me, want to reach out through our podcast ears, wherever you're listening, and give Lucas a big hug. of love and support for his courage to be alive, his courage to be open with who he is, his commitment to the gospel, trying to navigate these sort of paradoxes of loving the church and but not having a clear path for companionship in the church and wanting to navigate that. And it's just a really complicated road that I honor how complicated that is. But now I kind of turn it back to you, Lucas, for more thoughts you want to share.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just forgot to mention my story with my dad.
Good.
I didn't talk about him.
Good.
It's going to be short. I'm not going to take long. But, I mean, as I said, my dad he used to be very strict. He was a bishop. He was very committed to the gospel, to the letter of the law. And that's his personality. I understand him. He had a rough childhood, so he isn't very open. He wasn't, sorry, very, very open emotionally to me. There were times when I was a teenager that I wanted to reach out to him and like, hey, Dad, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? And I tried. But because of the way he is, I was scared. And second, I couldn't find common ground to connect with him to that level. So we never talked about it for forever. The first time I talked about this with him, because I had this feeling that he knew it, but again, taboo. We don't talk about uncomfortable things. So at this time, I was not living with my parents anymore. That was after my mission. I was living out of the house. Now I was 24, yes. And I was talking to a friend and she said, well, you have to talk to your dad about this. I was like, no, I can't. This is going to be too much for me. I'm going to have, I don't know, a heart attack of the amount of anxiety I'm feeling right now, just because you say that. But she said, okay, Lucas, that's up to you. But I trust you and I know who you are. So try it. Your dad, you need to have this conversation with him. And I was shaking after the call. I was so anxious. So I decided to text him because I wanted to give him some time to think about it. I did not want to face him like at the same time. So before going to bed, I wrote him like a huge text. Huge. It's kind of silly, but I talked to him about a bunch of stuff. And then I went through the bushes first. And then at the end, I said, well, so I'm like my mom. I'm gay. And I hit send and I turned off my phone because I did not even I didn't want to hear back from him that night. So I go to bed. I wake up the next day and well, he answered me. And to be honest with you, in my mind and in my fear, I thought that he was gonna be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm embarrassed. And all the negative thoughts that one think when coming out to one's parent. But no, he caught me by surprise because he answered me in such a loving and Christ-like way. And I was like, this is not my dad. Who answered this text? But the thing is, he was very stoic, but like deep inside, I think God was preparing him to answer in the way that he should. Because my dad raised me basically and my stepmom. So I was afraid that they were going to reject me, but they didn't. And I went on to have lunch with him that day. And it was a little bit awkward because, from all the things I've heard him saying about people like me, I was like, well, this is kind of hard to digest now. But I'm very forgiving and merciful when it comes to people because I know that I make mistakes. And when I make mistakes or when I say things that I shouldn't, I feel bad. And I hope for people to forgive me if I am really repentant, So I extend that to the people too. So I talked to him. And then 3 months later, I moved to Spain again. And there was a time of, it was like a flat time, as I like to say, that we didn't talk about this. But as things started to get worse and worse in my life mentally, I started to reaching out for help to him. And again, he's not very emotional, so it was kind of hard. But I kept insisting. So it was like a step by step, journey. And we've been talking about it way more over the last 2 months. And I think we've made progress. I still feel kind of uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, because we don't know how to handle the situation pretty well still. But I'm glad that he's reaching out more and that this is not such a big of a deal as I thought that this would be. And of course, I know that for not for everybody is the same. I know that for some people, their parents may be a little bit more, strict or may say harsh words. But even though the problems I've had with my family and my older brother and my dad and my uncles when it comes to this, I feel blessed in a way because it has taught me to be more patient with people, to be more Christ-like, to be more loving, to be more kind, and to understand that progress is not instantaneous. It takes time. But, well, yeah, yes. Yeah. That's it with my dad. Yeah.
Probably a little bit like your dad. And I love this. To me, is just a beautiful love story with your mom and your dad. And and if you're, divorced and wondering if your kids can be okay, this is a podcast that should give you peace, that even though divorce is not what we seek when we first get married, that, often kids do just fine. And you are an example of that. But I love that you wanted to engage your dad, even though it's a little, I think that's your desire to have a relationship and recognize that I want to have a relationship with my dad. And it's going to take work on both of us. And you're going to give your dad grace. I think it was great to come out via text. And so your dad could process that. And I would guess opening that phone and wondering if there were a text there and the one you got, you won't forget. That morning, I assume that you saw your dad. And I love that you're, kind of saying, Dad, this is what I need. I think it's okay to be clear to parents and to mission presidents and to bishops and to friends. This is, instead of sort of making them try to figure out, sometimes we do that in relationships, just to be clear on what we need in the relationship, because a lot of people want to do the right thing. I think it's good you're clear in what you want to talk about this, Dad. And we want to have an ongoing discussion. It helps me, just like you did with your mission president. So I think that's a good thing. I thought of BYU a little bit, and I don't know if there's any BYU listeners out there in administration, students, anyway, but if you feel impressed, send Lucas a DM. We'll probably put some of his Instagram. I know his Instagram is how he found me. We'll put that in the show notes. And Lucas could probably use some support at BYU. If you're a classmate, just follow your impressions, if that would be helpful for Lucas to know you listen to his podcast and you care and you want to be a support for him. I think he could use the support at BYU for those of you that are listening. It's not an easy place to be. I came from that academically as a graduate student there, and I can't imagine that was demanding, but I fit in. I'm dating. I wasn't married. I met my wife at BYU as a graduate student, but it was intense. But I'm from Utah. I fit into the culture there. So I just recognize for those how difficult it is just on the academic framework, and you're navigating being an international student and also being a gay member of the church. And so I hope that we do everything we can to help you feel needed and supported and belonging, because BYU is a better place because you're there and your gifts and attributes and insights. So anyway, anything else you'd like to share, Lucas?
Yeah, I just would like to share a scripture verse that it's one of my favorites. It's a pretty well-known one. It's in Romans 8:28. just because I was talking to a friend almost a month ago, and about how it's like, from one point of view, all the things that happened to me while growing up could have made me become bitter, angry, and very, I would say, well, not very Christ-like per se, but those things actually helped me to become more like Christ, and which is kind of contradicting, right? Because usually people, when they go through like some of the things that I haven't shared still here, they usually turn their face like from God and from their families and from people in general. But like what I like about me, because I think this is one of my gifts, is like to turn the dark and dreary moments of life into light, into happiness in a way. So in Romans 8:28, sorry, I'm still looking for the scripture. Okay, here it is. It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are who are called according to his purposes. And I know that. Oh yes, I know, Richard. I know that every moment when I thought that I wouldn't be able to make it anymore, every thing that I went through, they have made me a better person. Not automatically, because that's not how it works, but it's because I turned to Christ with these things and I said, well, I know that you're not going to simply take these things out of my hands. So please help me to be like a potter, right? That molds things into I don't know, something beautiful. And of course, I'm not actually the one doing it. It's Christ. I do it through Christ. But yeah, that's what gets me through life. It's like this sense that no matter what happens, I know that God can and will be with me, and he can help me turn this into a beautiful experience somehow. I don't know how he does that, but he does. So yeah.
Oh, it's a beautiful one. I love that you read that scripture through that lens and it gave you hope, and your ability to share. You create hope in our listeners as you share your story. I do love the concept of future me, listeners, that you did. I just think our future me's, if you're an LGBTQ letter saying or not, I think our future me's, if they could talk to us right now, would fill us with hope for where we are and compassion for where we are. Even though we don't feel that sometimes, I think our future me's, which sometimes I think because sort of represent the words our heavenly parents would say to us or our Savior would say to us that see our future me. I think they'd fill us with our current me with a lot more hope. Our future me's are much more compassionate to our current me's than we are.
Yeah.
So I think that is sometimes a really helpful concept to think of somebody that's 10 years older than us and 20 years older than us, because I think your younger me, if they could see you now, would just go, wow, I am so impressed with my future me. I never imagined you're 20, I lost your age here, you're 27.
I'm 27.
Your 17-year-old self could see you at 27 at BYU, served a mission, being open about your sexual orientation, having this relationship with your mom and your dad and all the lives you blessed in Chile. So I think our younger me's are much more are grateful for our older me's and what we've accomplished that might surprise them. So your last 10 years has just been remarkable, Lucas.
Yeah.
And I think your 37-year-old self, is just going to be awesome. And you're laying down the foundation with school and your work experience from a career standpoint, I think be very successful career-wise. But maybe more importantly, the work you've done spiritually and emotionally to really lay this foundation of don't know the right words here, to be completely loving and accepting of yourself and recognize Heavenly Father loves you. And being open about your sexual orientation and taking the shame away from that, I think makes the rest of your life possible. Listeners, I've talked about the gathering of Israel a lot, and Lucas did that when he went to Chile and in Spain with this woman that was baptized. And the Gathering of Israel obviously is helping people find the restored gospel. But another part of that is helping our own covenant people, LGBTQ Latter-day Saints, feel gathered. And right now, a lot of them feel pretty scattered with the things we've said in the past, the cultural jokes that we've normalized at times. But we need to be gatherers. We need to look at LGBTQ people as not this other group of people, but our own family, our ward members. And I love these missionaries stories you have in Spain of missionaries that you opened up to, and they seem to kind of get it. They seem to be pretty loving and accepting and supportive of you. So I do recognize the younger generation often has little different feelings about, and they mostly because they have proximity. They know queer people, and they haven't sort of bought into some of the stereotypes that I bought in or the appropriateness of gay jokes. So that's a thought for you as we gather Israel. People like Lucas are Israel, and they've been scattered. They've been pushed to a side of the vineyard sometimes. It's represented in Jacob 5, but they provide good roots that strengthen the vineyard. You've been doing that your whole life, bringing forth good fruit represented by the good roots of Jacob 5. And we need to do a little more nourishing of you, Lucas, so you can continue to do that through love and support and validation and helping you feel like you belong. It's one of the greatest gifts we can give somebody else is they truly feel like they belong. And our church talks more about that word, and I think it's a good word. Any closing comments for our listeners, Lucas?
No, I think I've said it all. And again, if any of you who's listening would like to reach out, I'm all ears. My social medias are open, so no private. You can send me a message, or if you see me on campus, you can also talk to me. I'm not ashamed anymore of this part of me. So, yeah.
It's great. We're going to put Lucas's Instagram in the show notes because I know that. Are there any other social media people should look for? Facebook? Or
I have Facebook too.
Okay. So if that's the way you can find Lucas as well as watch from on campus. So listeners, thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing these episodes. We're like at 8 or 9 million downloads. This is just a labor of love to be able to elevate stories like Lucas. And thanks for your work to listen and share these stories, because this is the way our hearts are changed, is having proximity, in this case, to queer Latter-day Saints. So this is Lucas, Batista, and Richard Osler signing up from another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love.